Hi there. How was that? Yeah, so here we are. Tuesday, April 21st, 2026. And this is the Solutio weekly broadcast, and I'm Colin Davis. And the websites are shadowtechalchemy.com and soluciopodcast.com. and melissamarimovie.com, where you can find everything about the movie I made about Melissa, and melissamarimusic.com, where you can find her music and the music that we made together, including what you just saw. That song was called Prima Materia. It's about the prima materia. It's about the work. It's about the great work, the shadow work, the alchemy. And that was the demo version. And what you saw there with the visuals, that's what we would project behind us when we played live for that song. And it's a lot of great artists that I got permission to use their fantastic art. So it takes me back. When was that? That would have been, probably, that song was probably written in 2018, so that's 8 years ago. And so here we are now, and very unfortunately, Melissa's not with us anymore, and so we have to carry on. We have to carry on with her mission. We have to do what she was doing and what she basically told me to do. So that's what I'm doing. And it's an interesting time because the world is very, very chaotic. I mean, there's always chaos in the world. That's the one thing we have to recognize, is there's always chaos, there's always evil. But it's for the Westerners, especially those of us who have grown up post-World War II, we had a very prosperous era. And now everything's crashing for us. And there's evil everywhere. There's corruption everywhere. And the people are lost. And they're just running around in the matrix and the rat race. And they're not able to really enjoy themselves. They're wage slaves, you could say. Or they're just slaves to all of the cultural scripts that tell them everything that they have to do, the progress that they have to make. And everything is external, outwardly focused. And our religion in this society is Christianity, and it's fallen away to a great degree. The people don't really believe in it anymore. Some people do, but a fraction of the people who did. And even though there's a revival going on, it's superficial. It's superficial. It won't work. Because people have they just can't take it literally anymore. Most people, they have to force themselves to do that. Now, if you interpret Christianity through the Jungian system, you can actually have the essence of what it's all about without having to believe in it literally. You actually get the juice out of the spirituality. And you get all these different layers of meaning that you don't get just from the basic exoteric mainstream religion. And so that is really, to my mind, that's the way to actually keep the faith, if that is what you are to do, and step into the 21st century and step into a higher, more mature way of relating to that faith. So it's not like we don't have options. And then, of course, what Melissa and I were doing, and anybody who's engaged in the alchemical work, which you could just kind of point back to Jung, if you just a simple way to explain what it is, just boom, point back to Jung, individuation. There you go. That's what it is. Well, that's a highly, highly spiritual, highly, highly meaningful way of conducting yourself and healing yourself and developing yourself inwardly, and it's highly spiritual, and it's very, very numinous. And so it's not like we don't have options. We do. But I think it's just the case that most people are not, they're not explorers of consciousness, and they're not explorers of the boundaries of anything, right? They're just, they're taking off the shelf whatever is given to them. They're just whatever, whether it is the food, or whether it's the culture, or whatever their preferences are and all that, they're choosing from a menu, from a collective menu. And so then there are the edge dwellers. Then there are the evolutionary, the imaginal cells. You could use a sort of a new age term. The people who are pushing the cutting edge of human evolution in whatever area. They might be in physics, they might be in psychospirituality, they might be wherever. But those people are not collectivists. They're not looking to the external world to figure out what their options are. And when you're in a place where because societies are, they're living systems, they're organisms, and they have life cycles. And so when you're at sort of, past peak in a societal life cycle, and everything's kind of crashing and everything, you have to, in order to be sane, in order to be able to thrive in that kind of a period, you have to do your own thing. You have to do your own thing in every way possible. And you say it means you have to be very, very creative. And you have to go through everything that you've taken for granted and say, well, maybe this isn't the way. You have to just go through everything about your life, everything about your thinking, everything about the way you approach relationships, all of it. Your ethics, your actual footprint in the world and how you live in the world materially, how you eat and how you take care of your body, how you take care of your mind. You have to go through all of that. You have to comb through that and say, I'm going to reinvent myself here, 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 and here. I'm going to keep this and I'm going to reinvent this. You have to become an artist, right? You have to become an inventor. You have to push the edge. And the people that do that, those people can live extremely meaningful, extremely prosperous lives while everybody else is suffering because they're being collectivists. And what's available on the shelf, so to speak, is not so nice anymore, right? So that's kind of where we are. So that's what we talk about here all the time. And so today, the title of today's program was "The Great Work is Hard Work." Because it is. It's really hard work. And I have some personal experiences, and I have I have a handful of people who I'm sort of interacting with, or I'm involved in their lives, and they're on the path too. And I hear about what's going on with them. I'm either assisting them or I'm just being involved in their lives in whatever way and supporting them. And so, I get to not only deal with my own problems, but help them work through their problems. And I always have some kinds of coaching clients, so to speak, and coming in and out and stuff. So I have access to other people's psyches and what's going on in other people's relationships. And so, it's just validated every single time how hard the great work is, the inner work, the alchemy, how hard it really is. But I always tell people that anything that is very, very important to do, and that's subjective. It's up to you to determine what's important. but everything that is really important to do. Like some people, it's very important for them to build their own house by hand, right? Like a log cabin in the woods or something like that, right? Or it is to start a restaurant, right? Start a restaurant and survive the first 5 years and make it turn a profit, right? Or that's what it is. Or it's raise a family, or it's be a farmer, right? And deal with all the ups and downs that come with being a farmer, and failed crops and animals getting sick and all of that. Whatever it is that's really, really important to you is going to be hard. It's going to be hard. Everything that you do that's worth doing, that's worth a damn, is hard to do. The reason why you can get through it is because it makes you feel so alive. That's why you do it. That's why you do anything that's hard, is because it makes you feel incredibly alive. It brings incredible meaning into your life. When you dedicate yourself to something that you have deemed to be extremely important. And it's gonna be hard. So it's not like humans can't do hard things. I mean, that's just known. All things that are really worth doing are hard as hell, right? So it's not like this whole project of inner work, of individuation, of shadow work, of healing yourself, developing yourself internally. It's not like that's, that it's in some ways it's in the same category with everything that's worth doing. It's no harder than any of those other things. It's just a different kind of orientation that doesn't really fit very well with our Western society. Now, if you go to the East, where they have a lot more, where the spiritual sciences are more integrated into the collective mind, and it's not like I have some issues with some of the Eastern practices, especially for people now, especially Westerners, because there's a lot of shadow bypassing going on in some of those practices. But regardless, whatever those systems are, staying dedicated to those is extremely hard. Advancing is extremely hard, but people are doing it, and it's talked about, and it's well known. But in the West, it's not really talked about. Our spirituality is an exoteric spirituality. Our Judeo-Christian spirituality is exoteric. It's got some esoteric aspects to it, but it's much more exoteric. So we can't really, we alchemists, we can't really look around and find other people that there's all kind of people dabbling, and there's all kind of people talking about what they're doing, and there's a bunch of YouTube heads and stuff like that. But there's not really that many really dedicated, masters of the art who are alive in the West. Carl Jung types who are just all in on this. There's just not that many of us. And so people don't really have models. They don't have very good models. And so, this is kind of what Melissa and I were doing, is we were first, before we even considered talking about what we were doing or sharing it or anything, we were always, let me put it this way, our inner work, our practice, our gnosis, our progress was always before sharing. We're never sharing anything that we're not successful with or don't really know well enough to really be able to come out with. So it was very slow. It was very slow. We were just involved in the process. We were just doing the alchemy within our relationship. and we were just keeping track of everything, recording everything on audio, on video, in journals. And then I put out articles from time to time. There was 2 books created in 12 years period. So we were really making sure that everything that we were talking about was rooted in integrity. Yeah, so anyway, yeah, there's not that many models out there, and so that's kind of what I'm doing now. That's kind of why I have a YouTube channel now. And it's up to you guys to share it with other people. You know, I always kind of come back to the whole thing of artists. Artists, a lot of times, we're not marketers. We're not supposed to be marketers. That's why we have record labels and PR agents and stuff like that. We're creators. We're not marketers. And so, yeah, there's a little bit of marketing that I kind of have to force myself to do. But really, I have to depend on you guys, and I just have to stick with it and then just wait for people to find it and share it. And it's up to you. You have to share it, right? I'll do a little bit of that myself, but then you guys have to share it. So, so I got some notes here, and so I'm going to be referring to those. And then we're always open for your comments, and I'll field your comments. And if anybody's really needs to call in, you know, I think we can do that towards the end of the show here. And so, if you want to do that, I should bring up how that's done. Just go to the YouTube description or go to soluciopodcast.com, and you'll see the call-in numbers. You can use WhatsApp, or if you're in the United States, there's a number. And just send me a text to that number, and it'll show up on this phone right here. And then I'll call you back. So anyway, so the great work is hard work, and got a number of things that I kind of wanted to address here. Let me say this before I kind of go into all that. There's the work that you have to do alone, and there's the work that you have to do alone, and then there's the work that you have to do in relationship, because you can't do all of it alone, and you can't do all of it in relationship. You gotta have both modes. And you know, I can't in every broadcast just like do a review of basic shadow work from the very beginning kind of thing or whatever, but so I'll just shout out, you know, go to my website, shadowtechalchemy.com. If anybody's watching this now or later and it's like, well, okay, give us some details about what the work is and stuff, go grab either of my books. And the second one has a whole lot of shadow work practices in it, and I give that one away for free. So there you go. And then everybody should always start with Robert Johnson's book, Owning Your Own Shadow. And then for a second book, I highly recommend Robert Masters' book, which is called Bringing Your Shadow Out of the Dark. Those 2 books will get you going. And then I've also actually, I actually put together I basically took my reading list from the back of Transforming Darkness, and I put it in an article on the website. So, and I'm going to keep adding to that list. I don't know how big I'll make it, because I don't want to make it look just totally daunting. But if you go to shadowtechalchemy.com and click on the articles page, then you'll see the latest article is called Shadow Work Reading List, right? And there's a bunch of books on there and some notes about what they're about. So go over there, and there you go. Now, I'm also, a couple other little updates here. I'll get back to what I was saying. It's kind of a stream of consciousness broadcast here. Also, I've got these 2 papers coming out. One is called the integral shadow, and the other one is called the shadow complex. And I'll probably put them out separately and put them together and then make a Kindle book out of it for Amazon or PDF or whatever, all that. And the integral shadow one has a whole lot of shadow work in it. And it has it across all 4 quadrants. That was in Transforming Darkness too. But this is like an even deeper dive into that model. And that is a really big aspect of my work. I didn't know that it was going to become such a big aspect of my work. The integral theory 4 quadrants: mind, body, culture, civilization. And so how you have shadow work in all 4 of those quadrants. Typical shadow work, Jungian shadow work, is the upper left-hand quadrant, the quadrant of mind or psyche. But then also you have relational shadow work and cultural shadow work in the lower left-hand quadrant. And then just getting super healthy and doing somatic practices is the upper right-hand quadrant of body. And then how you actually plug into society and how you clean up your footprint, so to speak, how you actually plug into the civilization, and how you analyze all your contracts and all of your interactions with the matrix, so to speak. That's your cleanup. That's your shadow work on the lower right-hand quadrant. So all of that has to be addressed. So it's an entire ethic of shadow-aware living. That's what we're talking about here. That's what Solutio is. That's what Shadow Tech Alchemy is. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're doing. We have an entire ethic, an entire way of life. And I've been talking about this a lot lately. The Erich Neumann's Depth Psychology and a New Ethic. And if you look on the videos of this channel, Shadow Tech Alchemy YouTube channel, you'll see that I took the book. I did a project with this. I took that amazing but difficult book and I used AI and some of my own, my own skills plus some computer skills, and I put together a paraphrased version of the book that simplifies it. And then I had an AI program read the book. It's like about an hour long, so you can just like listen to that on my YouTube channel. It's one of the last videos, if not the last video. It's Depth Psychology and a New Ethic, Erich Neumann. Extremely important. And then you'll basically hear what Melissa and I were doing and talking about and pushing and promoting and proselytizing about was already what Neumann and Jung were talking about in 1949, but nobody listened. And so it wasn't until after Melissa passed, it was last year, that I found that book and I said, oh my God, this has already been fleshed out. So I just really am on that now. And I think that is like just a core, it's just so amazing and beautiful and validating to develop a shadow-aware ethical lifestyle and shadow-aware practices and shadow-aware relationships and all of that, to do that like Melissa and I did, and then to find that a famous Jungian had already come up with his own system and his own explanation for how and why we have to do this. And it was, what is that, 75 years ago or something, 80 years ago or something. So, he puts it a little differently than I do, but it's basically what it is. And Carl Jung wrote the foreword to it and basically said, yes, we have to do this. Start now. Okay, so it's really, really validating and amazing for me to be developing this whole holistic shadow work, shadow aware system, and then to find that it was already fleshed out by Carl Jung and Erich Neumann themselves, and that I'm just continuing on with their work without even really knowing it. And so it's just amazing. I just love that. So you're always going to hear me talking about that, and I highly recommend you guys go listen to that audio video presentation. It's on the YouTube channel. Last video I put out. So now let me get back to, last thing. That was the integral paper. Then there's the complex paper. Last thing I'm going to say, I'm going to get back to my notes. The complex paper. So it's interesting, Transforming Darkness, my last book, had a chapter on the shadow in 4 quadrants. That's the integral paper. And it also had a chapter on autonomous complexes. And so now I have a new paper coming out on that. So I just keep deepening my understanding of how these things work. And just keep writing about them. And now I'm using AI to help me research and flesh out certain things. And so now I have I think the integral shadow paper is about 30 something pages. And then the complex paper is 6 or 7 pages or something like that. But what these do is I'm kind of building the platform. I'm building the legs of this system. It's all, Melissa and I already developed it all. It all just came down to us. We just downloaded this whole thing between us. And everything that I talk about now is just a recapitulation of what came to us in sacred time, right? During sacred time, that's when it all came down to us. And now I'm just recapitulating it, clarifying it, deepening it, and using it as the platform for what I'm building now. So I'm looking forward to sharing this with you guys because you'll really get a deep, fundamental understanding of in the integral paper how to do shadow work, everything about the shadow in all the 4 quadrants, and everything about different kinds of shadow work practices. There's a whole list of questions, personal inquiry that you can ask yourself these questions to unearth shadow material. So that's that. And then reading the complex paper, you're going to understand what complexes are, how they become maladaptive, how they become pathological, how they inject themselves into your life, how they take you over. There's an example that comes from, it's like a fictionalized version of real life of a complex that arises in a relationship, and you can read through that and kind of feel what it's like when complexes take us over. Everybody knows what it's like when a complex takes you over, and you say, I don't know what came over me. I was just possessed, right? That's when an autonomous complex takes you over. And so a lot of what we're working with in shadow work is that we're working with our complexes. We're tracing them down and unwrapping the patterns, the childhood patterns, the intergenerational patterns, the archetypal patterns that are combining in the complex and are being triggered by the outer world. And there's always some wound down there, and there's always an archetype down there, and it's coming up into your consciousness. So you got to get down into those things and start digging those things up and start integrating all the emotions and the thoughts and the feelings and all of the content that's in the complex, right? So those 2 papers, and I'll probably put them together also, and so you'll just have a really nice, I feel like when you have this new presentation, book, paper, whatever it is, and you have my 2 other books, I think you have everything you need to really have a deep shadow work practice, a deep alchemical practice for yourself. Plus, all the other references that I give you guys. So I'm basically, trying to become kind of a, you can't just rely on one person for your alchemical skill set. But I do want to make it so that, when you come to me, you have kind of a whole toolkit. You have a whole toolkit that you can work with, and then you can add to it, whatever you want from other people's systems, and you can come up with your own stuff, right? That's all we did. I mean, we synthesized a lot of other people's stuff too, but so that's what it is. So there we go. Now, the great work is hard work, right? That's what we were saying. Pushing through grows you. Chickening out, breaking promises to yourself and others breaks you inside. So when you come to those things, right? You're being a shadow-aware person. You're keeping track of the negative thoughts and feelings that are coming up in your psyche. You're journaling. You're thinking about these things, and you're going, yeah, what is that? What is that about me? Where did that come from? Where did that fear come from? Where did that shame come from? Where did that guilt come from? Right? You're noticing that stuff. You're noticing your baseness. You're noticing your attempts to control people, or your attempts that everything be perfect and everything, your obsessive compulsiveness, your control drive. You're noticing these things. You're noticing your sexuality that's repressed or that's leaky. You're noticing this stuff. You're starting to notice your own narcissism, right? You're starting to notice that. You're starting to listen to what other people say when they give you feedback, even if it's negative. You're starting to go, well, maybe there's something to that, right? So you're engaging. You're doing basic shadow analysis, and as you get deep into that, more and more into that, you realize, well, there's some things in there that I need to rectify. I need to change my behavior. I need to change my thought process. I need to say and do things to try to clean this up, right? That's before you even get to emotionally processing the material and how you actually purge and emotionally process old emotional material. You're just looking at it and you're like, yeah, wow, I got junk, right? And so as you go into this deeper and deeper, you come upon things that are difficult to face, things that are difficult to move through, challenges that you realize, well, it's like I commonly give people the exercise. This is an exercise you can do. Get out a notebook and just write down. Don't stop. Just keep writing down everything that makes you anxious, everything that makes you angry, everything that makes you scared, right? Just write it down. Just one sentence after the next. Just everything from you don't even have to categorize it. Everything. Your family, you have to go to a family reunion. You don't want to do that. That kind of pisses you off that you even have to do that. You have to, your job isn't working out. You're probably going to have to do a new job. Your business isn't really working out. Whatever it is, some issue with your kid in school or whatever it is, write it down. One thing after the next, just write down every single thing that pisses you off, makes you anxious, makes you fearful that you dread, everything that's negative, things about yourself you still don't like, just write it all down. Make that list. It might be very long. It might be quite a number of pages, but write it down. Now, the writing down process will bring material into consciousness, and that itself will actually clear you a little bit. That will actually balance you a little bit. But then you'll get to see on paper, here's the things that I've been avoiding, and here's the things that I need to work on. And then you can start diving into those things. And there's no timeline on any of this. There's, maybe on some things there is, but generally you gotta work on these things, and you're just like, okay, start with the easier things first then. And if you're experiencing psychosomatic pains, all kinds of different body pains or syndromes or anything like that, as you start working through this list, you may notice that a lot of that stuff starts to shift or you might become relieved of those things, or they might go away even. So things will start to move. But you go through your list and you start pulling things off the list. And here's where you'll notice, wow, this is really hard for me. This is really, really hard for me to do this. Doesn't seem like it should be hard, but it's really hard. So that's where you know you've found a complex that's back there somewhere. You found something repressed that's back there somewhere. You found some kind of wound back there. You found some kind of internal dissociation that's down there. And you got to go work through it now, right? Things that you wanted to tell your husband or wife that you haven't been, put it all on the list. Everything that's shadowy, put it on the list. And so then you'll notice that some of this stuff is hard, and what are you going to do about it now? Well, I read you this sentence. I'm kind of giving you context now to kind of back up that sentence that I read to you. Pushing through grows you, chickening out, breaking promises to yourself or others breaks you inside. It literally shatters you. It fractures you inside. You're already shattered inside to some degree. You're already dissociated inside. That's why you have issues, right? It's because there's already internal dissociation. And then every time you realize this is the right thing to do externally, or this is the healthy thing to do internally, and then you don't do it, or you say, I'm going to do it, and then you break your promise to yourself or your promise to somebody else, whether it's internal or external. If you don't act with integrity and courage, sounds like Jordan Peterson now, but if you don't act with integrity and courage, right, then you just split yourself up and weaken yourself internally even more. And then as you start to summon courage and as you start to summon willpower and you start to push through those things on your list, for example, that are difficult and that you don't want to do, but then when you do it and you really embrace it, then you come back together, then you strengthen, right? Then you develop fortitude, and then you can kind of use that built up fortitude, that built up strength as you go forward. And so this is like the bottom of it. This is basic. And because if you can't keep promises to yourself, if you can't push through the difficult things so that you can clean yourself up internally, you know that you need to clean yourself up internally. You know you need to clean up your relationships. You know that you need to act with integrity. All the basic Judeo-Christian ethics, we retain that. We retain all that basic stuff. You know what's good for you, good for others, and what's not. It can definitely get subjective, and it can definitely get kind of wishy-washy in places, but many times you know what it is. And so integrity, the word integrity, write the word integrity down. Think about integrity. Buy a plaque or something that says integrity and put it above the door. Integrity. And so this is about integrity and commitment to doing the difficult thing because you know that it's the right thing, it's the healthy thing, and that you know this is all about developing yourself and healing yourself. And so you do it. And so the people who have that ability to do that at the most basic level, I'm not saying, I'm not trying to say find the most extreme and difficult thing that you could possibly find to work with and then jump on it. And if you can't accomplish that, then you're a loser. I'm not saying that. I'm saying the basic stuff that's on your list. And so that is going, and not everything, you don't have to work with everything now. There's some things that are on your list that you can work with now. You can go talk to you may somebody in the family that you don't get along with or whatever, and there's things that have to be done and said, and it's uncomfortable, but it's not the end of the world, and you can certainly do it. That's something to do, right? Or talk to your boss or whatever it is, or look for another job or whatever. That's hard. There's pushback on all that stuff, right? Or your wife or husband has been telling you something or whatever, and you've been putting it off and blah, blah, blah. So now, this is all kind of moving into the category of just general self-help and out of the world of shadow work, but it's basically all shadow work. When you put a psychological lens on any of this kind of stuff, it's now shadow work. So the person who's going to develop internally, the person who's going to evolve, the cutting edge person, the person who's at the cutting edge of human consciousness, this can be a wounded person. This can be a wounded person. It can be a person with a lot of issues. When we're talking from this frame here, from the alchemical frame, the people who are the superstars of this generally have a lot of issues, right? So, what makes them a superstar of this is not, is how willing and courageous they are to go into their shadow and to push through these difficulties and to stay with it, stay the course. And in relationship, to not break the container, use the relationship as the alchemical vessel. And when the complexes get activated, because they always do, stay with it. Do not leave the relationship. Stay with it. Come back to that person. Come back to that person. Analyze the situation with them. And go into it. Go into the muck. Pull it out. Pull out the stuff. Here's my side of it. Here's your side of it. And when you have some tools, when you have some psychological framework to understand this stuff, you can just use the Jungian understanding of a complex. Like when my paper comes out, you'll have a basic understanding from the Jungian point of view of a complex and how it works. But then you can take the IFS system. You can take internal family systems. I recommend everybody start looking at that. And you can start looking at the parts of you that get activated that create conflicts, that create difficulties in relationships as what they call parts. They just simply call them parts. They break a complex up into several parts. And so when you have that language, when you have that topology, you and your wife, you and your husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, best friend, whatever it is, when you have that as a topology, then you can speak to each other with that language. And then you can start inquiring, well, what parts are getting active and what are the needs of those parts? And you know what? I want to add something else. I've been using ChatGPT and Grok. I've been using both ChatGPT and Grok. And no, I'm sorry. I've been using ChatGPT, Grok, and Claude. Claude is the one I've been using most these days. These are all AI programs. And they have issues. These programs have issues. These are not you can't rely on these things completely or anything. But you can do psychotherapy with them, right? You can do IFS with these things. You can do IFS with ChatGPT and Claude. And you can explain what happened in your relationship. You can take, this is what you can do. This is what I've done. You can have a conflict with your husband or your wife or your spouse, your partner, whatever. You have a conflict, and then you can record on your phone your testimony. Okay? Man records his testimony onto his phone. Talk into it for 20 minutes or whatever it is and record what happened, and explain everything that you know so far about parts and what you think happened and what feelings are back there and what did it remind you of in childhood and why were you so triggered. Explain it best you can. Then have your wife do the same thing. Have her explain in her phone. Take those 2 audio files, convert them to text, to make a transcript out of them. And we could talk about how to do that. I use Evernote to do that. And then give that to Claude or to ChatGPT and say, help me figure out, using internal family systems therapy or Jungian psychology, what is going on in this conflict. Just like you would take it to your therapist, right? You would take it to me or to a therapist, whoever. Somebody that knows about this stuff. And now you can do it with the computer, and you'll make some progress with that. You'll get some stuff back. These programs, they know a lot of forms of psychology. They fed a lot of forms of psychology into these LLMs. And so that you can definitely do that. Oh, well, thank you. Thanks for commenting. It's just, and you guys are going to have to tell me what your names are, so I can refer to you all by name. But I actually have a list of everybody that tells me what their name is. I write it down on my list on the computer here so I can keep track of everybody. So when I see your handle, I'll know what your name is. So that was just a little sidetrack there about how to use these AI programs to do therapy with them. And so this is fantastic. But anyway, so you're in your relationship. You've been studying some IFS. Before we found out about IFS, we had Eckhart Tolle's understanding of the pain body. Chapters 5 and 6 of his second book, A New Earth. The pain body. There's one chapter in his first book. Plenty of articles, YouTube videos. It's a simple way of understanding an autonomous complex that's feeding on the conflict of your relationship, or just feeding on conflict that comes to you in life. That's a good one to start with. And then you have IFS that deepens it. You have the Jungian system of complexes that have an archetypal core. That's another way of getting into it that's probably even deeper. And so you have some of this in your toolkit, and so then you have this conflict with your partner, and then you use these maps, you use these tools with each other. Okay, so it might not happen that night. Next day, what happened? What part of you was activated? Why did you feel that way? What did it remind you of? Oh, it took me back to this. It took me back to that. How did you feel in those moments? Well, I felt out of control. Or I felt somebody was controlling me. Or I felt I was being shamed. I felt like I was being guilt-tripped. I felt like I was being gaslit. And then when you said this or you did that or whatever, it just pulled that back up again. And it just totally took me over and inflamed me, and then I had the reaction that you saw. And so you're getting to know what is back there, what's down there, what patterns are still running. You're a 30, 40, 50, 60-year-old person, and you're still running patterns from when you were 8 years old, right? And then as you go deeper, you find out these are your parents' patterns. You find out that a lot of your junk, a lot of your issues is not even yours. It's not even your stuff. It's their stuff. They didn't treat you as bad as their parents treated them. But you're still carrying their junk. So you have to clean it up now. They didn't clean it up, and so you have to. So, that's the process. That's what you're doing with these complexes in relationship. This is the alchemical relationship. And the tendency for most people is to back away. and to, okay, just stop. The fight happens. The complex turns. One person's the aggressor, one person's the victim. Sometimes it flips and the victim turns into the aggressor and then re-traumatizes the other person. And all this happens. And so then the tendency for most people is to just break away, just make space, go in the other room, leave, don't call that person back for a while, whatever it is, and just move away. And then when you come back together, don't talk about it. That's what most of humanity does. And so most of humanity doesn't evolve. They don't heal and they don't evolve. And so they just bring all that stuff up. It just gets more encased, more solidified. And then it just starts to eat you up inside and it starts to make you sick and it makes you triggerable, and you don't evolve, you devolve as you grow older. As you grow older, as your body falls apart as you grow older, your psyche can actually come back together. Your body falls apart and your psyche becomes whole. Two different paths. But most people, the body falls apart and the psyche falls apart as they get older. We're not doing that. We're bringing our psyche back together. All the fractures, all the split-offs, all the dissociations, we're pulling it all apart, we're cleaning it up, we're airing it out, we're draining those wounds, we're pulling it out, and we're allowing the psyche to re-heal and come back together. Best it can. It doesn't come back together perfectly. Best it can. And then we become less triggerable, we become less agitated, less neurotic, less anxious, less depressed, whatever it is. And then when you do this, like I was saying before, when you do this with integrity and with courage, then you feel real good about that. You're like, I'm doing something that's really good for me, that's really hard, and it feels really amazing. I feel like, even though I'm still hurting, I feel like a winner. I feel like I'm evolving. I feel like I'm doing the right thing. I feel like I'm burning up karma. I'm actually burning up karma by doing this. That's how you feel. And you feel proud of yourself, and then your spouse feels the same way. And then when you do this together, then it just brings your relationship closer. Because your relationship, your ability to be intimate with another person is limited by your triggerability. It's limited by your complexes, right? So when you start to, what couples do is when they start to get close to each other's wounds and people start getting a little bit triggered and stuff, they learn kind of where they can tread and where they can't tread. And then they stay away from those areas. And so there's all these areas of life and experience and the past that you can't explore with the other person. It's like parts of their life that's blacked out. Parts of your life that are blacked out, right? So you don't really know everything about the other person. You know some things about the other person, you know maybe a lot, but you don't know the real difficult stuff. And so you can't relate to them around their difficulties because they're not willing to go into them. So if you can't relate to another person around the subjects of their difficulties, their trauma, and then use your empathy to bond with them and to feel them and to help them explore these difficult areas, if you can't do that with them, you don't really have real intimacy. And you can't really develop your emotional intelligence and your sensitivity, because that's what it takes to work with people at that level. It takes real sensitivity and real emotional and intuitive capacity. And when two people are exploring these deep and wounded parts of themselves together in total good faith and with love, then they're healing themselves, and they're learning, they're experiencing true deep intimacy that most people are just not experiencing. Most people are not getting. Married people, couples, they're not getting the depth that is possible because they're just walking around these areas, avoiding all these areas. So when you do this relational alchemy, you become very bonded and very intimate with that other person, and that person becomes, your souls become one. And I know this because this is what Melissa and I did. This was our path. And we were both completely dedicated to it. Completely. And in the beginning of the relationship, the first couple of years, there was all these episodes where complexes were getting activated. The pain body was getting activated, right? And there were attempts. Melissa's some of her parts, one part we called Running Girl, was trying to get out of there. Not have to experience the wound. And she was giving me all kinds of opportunities to say, okay, it's done. This is too hard. But I realized, no, our relationship is very important, very important. I got it because our relationship was numinous. It was numinous. It was very, very powerful, very spiritually connected and numinous. And I said, I'm not going to do what I've done with other girlfriends. I'm not doing that. I'm going to stay and I'm going to work through this. And this is what we're supposed to do. And this is what we talk about. This is what we're doing. This is our path. We're alchemists and we're doing this. Even before we even knew we were alchemists, we just knew. And so I just stayed with it. And then she realized, she learned, okay, this guy's going to stay. He's not going to chicken out. He's not afraid of anything that's in me. So we just continued on, and we got deeper and deeper and deeper and more into it, and then we got more and more healed through it. And so you don't just get healed of your neuroses this way, because it's a lifelong process, but you get to experience a depth of relationship, a depth of bonding that most of the population is not experiencing. So this is just another aspect of the work. It's not just about your own personal shadow and what you're doing alone, and your journaling and your art therapy and your talking to the computer or to a therapist and dream work and all of that. It's not just that. This is working through your complexes as they arise in your relationship and keeping the skillet on the fire, keeping the fire under the alchemical retort, the alembic. That's what the alchemists, the glassware, where they put their concoction in there and they put it under the fire and it breaks up into parts. That's what we're doing. So it's hard work. It's very challenging work, but it's the most meaningful, amazing thing that you could possibly do with yourself if you're oriented in this way. And I know that not everybody is. Obviously, not everybody's oriented in this way. But the people who are, the people who know I'm a wounded healer, they know I'm attracted to Carl Jung. I'm attracted to inner work practices. I'm attracted to shadow work. I'm attracted to intuitive sciences. I recognize that I had a difficult childhood. I recognize there's aspects of me that are beautiful and are amazing, and I have certain talents, but I can't get them out. I can't really get them into the world. I'm having trouble accessing my inner gold, but I know I have inner gold. All people who talk like that and find themselves reading this kind of material, all that, we're alchemists. So this is what we do. And then There's, if we will do the real deep work, then there's lighter gradations of this that we can then share with other people. We'll do the heavy stuff, and then some other people will do the heavy stuff too because they'll be inspired by us, but then also there'll be lighter stuff that a lot of average people can use. So everybody that gets involved in this inner alchemy and really takes it seriously and really matures through this, every one of you becomes a teacher. Every one of you becomes an elder. That's another thing I wanted to bring up is Michael Meade's understanding of the older and the elder. Most people in our society now are becoming olders. Do you just grow up? I mean, you grow old. You're 70, you're 80 now, and you're an old person, but you're not an elder. And then there's people who do the work. And not everybody, like I keep saying, not everybody is becoming an elder is about being totally internally focused. But even people who are more exoteric, they learn from experience, they learn wisdom. So an elder is somebody that has wisdom that comes out of learned experience and analysis of all the difficulties of life and what was learned, and they have a sense of awareness, self-awareness, and they can kind of get out of their own head, and they can analyze themselves and where they've been, and they're consciously trying to make themselves better in some way or another. Those people become elders. So that's what we want to do when we grow. We want to move into eldership. We don't want to be olders, we want to be elders. So and this is how we do it. So let's see where we are in time. Okay, we're doing good. And I'm back to my notes here. So I talked about golden shadow work. What's your destiny? What's blocking it? You and the world need your gold. So a lot of times when we're talking about shadow work, we're talking about fear and shame and grief and guilt and narcissism and sexuality and all this kind of primal stuff or wounded stuff. But then there's the golden shadow, right? This is where your joy's at. Your joy, your talents that are undeveloped. You know you have them, but they're undeveloped. I notice a lot of people have artistic abilities that are undeveloped, especially in our society. And because I'm an artist, and so, I talk about art and how to be a successful artist. And when I say successful, I don't mean successful in you're making you're a well-known top person. I mean, you are successfully getting access to your skill, to your talent, to your genius, and you're getting it into the medium of choice. And you're completing art pieces, and you're putting them in the world in some way or another, and you're looking back at it and you're saying, wow, that was good. I did a good job. I like my work. That's what it is to be a successful artist. To be competent, and to, even if it's extremely hard to do, to be able to pull it out of you, and then to be able to put it in the world and say, I'm happy with that. That's what it is to be a successful artist. And a lot of people have artistic skills that are undeveloped. I meet so many people. I mean, I question people all the time. Whenever I get to know somebody, it's, well, okay, so what's on the art side? What's on the art side? You play an instrument, you sing, you draw, do you paint, do you write? What's on the art side? And, what's on the art side, and what are you doing with it? What are you doing with your art? Oh, well, I kind of have a sketchbook and I'm blah, blah, blah. Sometimes I pick it up or whatever. When I have some free time, I okay. How is it? Do you wish that you could be doing more art? Oh, yeah, of course. I'd like to do this. I'd like to do that. Well, why aren't you doing it? Oh, well, I just got so many other things going on and stuff like that. Well, you have to make a place for that. You have to make time for that. And then you have to go through the blockages that are in the way. Because if those blockages weren't there, you'd be making art all the time. Whatever it is. Art or being creative. Let's just call it creativity, being creative. Because for some people, it's not quote unquote art, but it's creativity. And the reason why you're not being as creative in life as you think that you could be, or you should be even, is because there's blockages there. There's shame there. Or there's some other kinds of social superego scripting or persona scripting, we would say, that says, this is not where you should be spending your time because this is what it is to be an adult, or this is what it is to be successful. And you shouldn't be spending your time on this, that, or the other because this is what successful people do. This is what adults do. Or, that's not going to lead to anything. There's no money in that. So this is all cultural scripting that is wrecking your creativity. So you have to throw all that out. Your soul does not care about all that cultural scripting. Your soul needs you to be creative. And it needs you to unblock what's in the way internally of you being creative. Right? So that's where the shadow work comes in. Right? And so then you got to get into that shame. You got to get into that fear of being rejected, of being ridiculed, whatever it is, of your parents' voices that are telling you, oh, that's not going to succeed. That's not what you should do. Whatever it is. You got to go into that stuff and you got to drain that stuff out, face it, and push through it. And that's your gold. That's some of your gold. There's all kinds of gold in there. That's like one really obvious way to describe your inner gold is your creativity, your artistry, your creativity. But you got gold about all kinds of stuff. It's like we were talking about relational alchemy a few minutes ago and how to work with your partner on with your complexes and staying with the conflict and analyzing it and developing intimacy. That's gold. That's real gold. The depths of intimacy that you have the capacity for. You have the capacity for a lot more intimacy than you already have, than you're already experiencing. And when you start to experience that kind of intimacy, that's true gold. That's rare and it's true gold. It's numinous material. So, gold is all kinds of stuff. Gold is all kinds of talents. All kinds of talents and capacities that are particular to you and that most people know something about their gold. They may not know. There's some gold that you don't even know about because it hasn't. It develops as you get older. As you get through different stages of life, different types of creativity come online, different types of passion come into your consciousness. And so some of this is in the future for you. And so you don't know what it is. But some of this you do know what it is because you've had it all your life. And, or some of it is right now, you're just now moving into an age, you're coming into a stage of life where there's something that you're right on the cusp of right now. And it's poking up. It's a little seedling and it's poking up. And you're If you go looking for it, you'll find it. And then you can start watering it and making sure it's getting sunlight. Staying with it. And as you stay with that little seedling and you start nurturing it and giving it water and light, you'll notice that it's bringing up all kinds of shadow junk along with it. And then you can start clearing that off and just keep working with it until you take care of that little, that life art, Melissa called it. That's your life art. And your life art is a child. It's a child that you have to nurture and take care of and love. That's your life art. So this is us now talking about gold in the shadow, the golden shadow. Kind of just going through my notes here and giving you guys a dose based on each of these notes. Here's one. I don't know if they're all in the right order exactly or not, but the narcissism of staying wounded and in the underworld. How about that one? You're welcome. The narcissism of staying wounded, of staying in the underworld. You know, some of the most talented people in this domain of inner work, of inner alchemy, healing yourself, self-healing, some of the most talented people, the most introspective, just amazingly talented people. I just know some amazingly talented people, especially women. I think women are some of the, because women have a natural, a lot of the material that we have to work with is emotional, it's feelings. The feelings are below the thoughts. And women are just archetypally, in general, not always, but in general, more connected to their emotional body, we could put it. And they're more connected to their physical body. And a lot of this material is stored in the physical body too. So women, and just the archetype of the feminine, you know, it's reflective, it's the moon, it's the earth, it's the body, it's the prima materia, the first matter. And so women have a natural capacity for this kind of work. And but when you have access to some of these darker feelings, and you have what comes with this talent and comes with this access is sometimes a real gravity. Some of this emotional content, this shadow emotional content, this shame, this grief, this guilt, feelings of victimhood, is very, very heavy. I talk about the myth of Persephone and how Melissa was a lot of women who are on this path align with Persephone. They align with Melissa and they align with Persephone. You know, she has to spend half her life in the underworld. And so, but men can do this too. This is not just women. This is this whole thing of being in the underworld. This applies to men and women. But I just mean that women have a certain kind of natural capacity for working with emotions. But when you are spending a lot of time in the underworld and it starts to become part of your identity, you start to unearth your wounds, you start to unearth your trauma, your developmental trauma, your complex PTSD or whatever you want to call it. And you start going through that. You're doing inner child work and you're going through your old stuff and you're thinking about your parents and you're just going through your stuff and you're like, this is my time. I have to go through this stuff. Well, this can get very, very heavy. This is the Negrito work in alchemy. It can get very, very heavy, and then it can hold you down there. And Persephone is supposed to come out half the year. She's not supposed to spend more than half the year underground. But a lot of people get very, very addicted, we could say, to the Negrito, to the underworld, to the processing. And on the worst case scenario is when they actually identify with their trauma. I have this syndrome. I have this PTSD. I have this. I have. And they put a label onto their condition. And then that thing sits there, and then they share that with the world. And now they've identified as being an underworld. I don't like saying the word victim, but I'll say it once. Yeah, so that archetype. And so that gets very, very heavy, very, very addictive, and it's like heroin. It's like a heroin addiction. You can get addicted to being in the underworld, addicted to being a shadow worker, addicted to processing, addicted to always kind of being on the, subject to these floods. But there's a time to be subject to these floods, to this flooding. And there's a time, sometimes years, of working through some of this stuff. Sometimes it's several years of working through this stuff. And then you're always revisiting it. It comes in cycles. So it's not like you're ever getting out of it, ever. I mean, you're not ever fully getting out of it. It's not like you're getting out of it fully, ever. But it's just like, first it's really deep and you're really in the groove. And then it gets shallower and shallower and shallower and shallower. So then you just go on like this. So you're always going to have your little mini dark nights of the soul, your little mini negritos. You're always going to have those. Even just your most basic understanding of having a mood swing, is one of those. But you're always going to have that. But when you're in your deep, deep processing that you might have to do, 2 or 3 times in your life, when you're in that, you don't want to stay there. Recognize that what you're down there now, it's like I can go back to Edinger's understanding of the ego-self axis. When you're in Jungian psychology, you have the self, the imago Dei, the image of God, the archetype of wholeness, and the basically the DNA that has your genius. And when your ego, your consciousness is aligned with that, there's no shadow. And you're high, and you're talented, and you're doing your thing, and everything's beautiful. But as the sun starts to set, and the ego starts to get out of alignment, or what he calls alienated from the self, that's where you have these dark nights of the soul. And you're 180 degrees out of phase with that alignment when you're at the bottom of the pit. And so you need to be down there sometimes. You have to reinvent yourself. You have to have the opportunity for all the shadow material to come up. Right? When you're like this, when you're high on your own supply and things are working out great, there is no shadow to be used, to be seen, to be worked with. It's like high noon. There's no shadow to be seen. But as you start to fall out of alignment, then it's all shadow. And that's when you're supposed to do this work. That's when you're supposed to do the shadow work. But then, what the whole idea is that when you're down there, you're going to find something. You're going to find some gold that wasn't available to you before because your whole orientation in life was different. Where you were when you were doing real well 8 years ago, 10 years ago, 3 years ago, where you were is where you were. And that's amazing. It's amazing. You did what you needed to do, and it's beautiful. And now you're not there anymore. And now you're in one of these darker periods. Let's just say that's going on. Well, it's because you're not aligned with that trajectory anymore. You have to take a right turn, a left turn. There's another road for you now. There's another, you got to get off the train on this platform, and you have to change trains. Get on a different train. And so your whole trajectory and everything about life and what you supposed you were and what you were supposed to do and all of that's being reoriented, and it feels like hell. Shedding the ego skin, it feels like hell. So this is when you do the work. But then you recognize, oh, this is my path. This is my new path. Oh, wow. Okay. I see what I'm supposed to do now. Or you start dabbling. And I'm going to dabble in this. I'm going to dabble in this. And you realize, oh, this is the thing. This is the thing that's giving me energy again. Wow, I'm getting energy again. Wow, I'm getting energy. I'm feeling something. Wow. And you stay on that, and you stay on that. Now, the issue is that as you start to get on that new trajectory and start to feel yourself again, it's going to be difficult. And there's going to be shadow stuff holding on to you and all that kind of stuff. So you have to stay on it. This is where the courage and the will comes in. Stay on it. And then you'll get on that next ride. And then you'll be coming out of the underworld. You'll be airlifted out. And sometimes somebody takes you and airlifts you out, and sometimes you have to operate it yourself. But you're coming out of the underworld, and you're supposed to, because you found where you're supposed to be. You found where you're supposed to be, what you're supposed to be doing next. And so you access some of your gold, and that's what you're supposed to do. You're not supposed to stay in the underworld for 5, 10, 15 years. You're not supposed to do that. No. What you need to do, people do that, but it's because they're not doing the shadow work down there. So they're just kind of sitting there, static. They're just sitting there in a holding pattern. And so we don't want to do that. So we don't want to get overly addicted to being in the Negrito. Recognize that the Negrito has a legitimate purpose. It's there to give you access to your shadow, so you need to do the work. You're going to do the work, and it's there to give you access to a piece of gold, which is going to be used on your next phase of life. So I wanted to say something about that. Recognizing if you're feeling in the Negrito, if you're feeling down and stuff, that's not your life. That's not what your whole life is supposed to be about. It's not. You're not supposed to be like that your whole life. And you're not even supposed to be like that for that long. There's a certain amount of time. It's different for everybody. Some people get through that stuff in 3 months. Some people get through it in 3 or 5 or 7 years. But it's not the rest of your life. And just realize that, and recognize that the Negrito, the lead, the heavy lead, it's lead in external alchemy. The Negrito is lead. Saturn is the alignment. And it's heavy. And it wants to hold you down. So, but I'm just letting you know, not supposed to be there all the time. It's a phase. That's why you just want to take the work super seriously. Read all the books you can and start doing the practices and try to find somebody. Try to find somebody. I mean, I do this for people. Try to find somebody who can be a helper, be a little bit of a guide. Try to find somebody that you can do the work with and who can help orient you on this path. So, what else do I have on my list here? Where are we in time? 9 o'clock? Yeah, okay. So we got another half hour. And anybody that wants to say anything, just put it into the comments. I appreciate your thanks and your sweet comments that you're putting in there. And if you have anything that's more detailed that you want to talk about, put it on in there. Anybody who wants to do that can do that. Like I said earlier, if somebody wants to call in, now's the time to do it. If you don't want to, that's fine. Just send me some comments. I'm here for you guys. I'm doing this for you guys, right? I'm doing this for you. So don't waste your life on social media. You will regret it. Yeah. YouTube is a cool place because it's like a big library, and there's you could learn a lot on YouTube. But Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, these kinds of things, I mean, I know we all have those platforms, and you know people on there, and you have messages that come through and stuff like that. You got to check in with those things. I know this is, where we're at in the world. Check in with that stuff. If you want to post something on there or whatever. I mean, some people have a whole life through that, and they're, making a living doing it and all that. It's not healthy, but they're doing it, and that's not who I'm talking to. I'm talking to everybody else that just has the average Facebook profile or Instagram or whatever, and they're just spending way too much time scrolling, because you can sit down with that thing and all of a sudden an hour's gone. And people, we all do this, an hour's gone, and it's like, whoa, where'd that go? I was just scrolling, looking at junk, looking at what other people are doing or acting like they're doing. And because that hour could have been spent, you could have read a chapter of the book that you're working on, on Jungian psychology, right? You could have written a journal entry and a dream journal entry, right? You could have, what I was talking about earlier, taken a recording of yourself or just a journal entry and putting it into an AI program like ChatGPT or Claude or Grok or whatever, and doing some psychology with it. You could be doing all kinds of productive stuff. You could be working on your creative work that we were talking about. Whatever your creative work is. An hour a day, when you're working on something an hour a day, whatever it is, it's going to get completed pretty soon. An hour a day, spend a year on something, an hour a day, you're going to complete stuff. And just imagine, a year passes by and you haven't been spending that time on your passion or on improving yourself, on learning. And in our case, it's on becoming an alchemist. And you haven't spent your time doing that because you were scrolling, and it's like you're looking back and that it was just waste. It was a waste. Now, I'm not actually proposing that people live their life by some kind of a schedule and everything is all tight and stuff. That sounds terrible. Especially for artist types. That does not sound good. But we're wasting a lot of time on social media that we used to spend reading or getting involved in creative activities. And so we have to stop that. We have to stop that. We just have to put some willpower into it, and we have to stop that. Check in with our social media or whatever every day, respond to our messages or whatever, and then we're out of there. That's it. I'm not saying go away from it completely. Check in, check out. Get back to life, what you're doing. So that's an important thing, I think, that I had to kind of come in and be a little bit of a daddy about that a little bit. The world doesn't need more stuff. We need psycho-spiritually mature adults. I wrote, this is in my list. Yeah, we don't need any more stuff. Some people's passion is building stuff. Okay, great. You got to do that then. But we need a lot more time spent in the domain that we're talking about here today than we do collecting stuff. qualify your relationships by setting out on the right foot. We are inner alchemists. Tell them up front what you do. Yeah, this is something I was telling a friend recently, and how I do this now, because I'm very solid now that in what I'm doing here with being an alchemist and working on myself and teaching and writing and all that. I'm very solid on that now. So I don't have any. For a long time, to tell you, it took me a while. It took a decade. It took a decade. It took the whole time with Melissa, basically, for me to really kind of. I started working on myself like 20. I was working on myself when I was 16, to some degree. But I got really serious about 21, 22 years ago. And I was just doing it just because I needed to heal. And then when Melissa came in, then I realized, oh wow, what we're doing this together now. And this is something, this is a thing. And we're like figuring stuff out. And wow, and then when a book came out and stuff, it's like, oh, okay, wow, well, I'm an author now? It's like, oh, wow. We're doing podcasts now? We're doing workshops now? Okay, wow. And then we started putting it into our music. We were both already musicians, so that was pretty easy. We didn't have any problem with that. But then it was like, wow, what am I? Because I was identified as a musician. And so did she. But then it was like, whoa, I'm like an alchemist? I'm like, what? What's that? I guess I'm a Jungian, but am I a psychologist? I don't have a degree in it. So how do I identify? What am I? and I just took quite a long time for me to actually figure out, like, whoa, what is going on here? What am I supposed to do? Now I'm in my 50s and I'm like, what is this? Where am I going? How do I identify? How do I tell people what I do? And so that took a while. Finally, I kind of like, okay, finally it came together. Finally, I'm like, all right, okay, I know what I am. I know what I do now. At least this part of my life. So I had the musician phase. I'm still a musician, and then I have this alchemy phase. Psycho-spiritual alchemist, whatever you want to call it. And so now, I never really liked superficial relationships or just, BS casual talk about the weather or whatever he or she is doing. I tolerate that. There's a certain amount of it. Everybody does anyway. We all do how's Bob doing? Oh, how's your mom doing? Sometimes it's just part of being a human. And I am curious. I do care what Bob is doing or how your mom is, So, that's normal. I recognize that's a certain layer of conversation and of communication with people. But that's not really where I want to go with people. I want to go into this. I want to go into the alchemy. I want to talk to people about their junk. And I want to talk to people about their gold. Right? Your shadow, your dark shadow, and your light shadow. That's what I want to talk about. I want to work that through. And so, in our society, in our superficial, materialistic, and psychologically illiterate society, you don't find too many people that are wanting to do that. So I just put out my fishing lure, and I just put it in there right off the bat. So I don't even hold back anymore. So if I meet somebody, I start talking to somebody, so what do you do? I kind of have to figure out in the moment exactly how I'm going to explain it. And I use my intuition to see how I'm going to explain it to that person. And I analyze the conversation prior to that and figure out, okay, where's their mind at? And I try to use my intuition and my brains to kind of figure out how to talk to them about it. Some people, maybe younger people, I'll just tell people I'm a Jungian psychologist. Sometimes that's just the easiest thing to do. Oh, okay. Well, they don't even know what that is, but okay, sounds fine. Move on. But sometimes it'll break open into a conversation. Sometimes I will say I'm a psychospiritual alchemist. And oh, whoa, okay, what's that? Well, here goes, right? And so I try different things with people and kind of see what fits, but I do it right away. I don't do small talk and stuff like that for very long. I'm like, boom, this is where I am. This is who you're talking to. This is what we do. Oh, wow, okay, how do you do that or whatever? Oh, blah, 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 and I'm an author of some books and blah, 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 and I just drop it right on them. So now they have the opportunity to ask me more about it. So what does that mean? How do you do that? And if they do that, if they're curious and if it doesn't scare them away, then I have an inlet into intimacy with that person. I have an inlet into depth with that person, right? And that's where I want to go. I don't want to have a relationship without intimacy and without depth. That's boring. So I just right off the bat, I find a way to bring them into something like that, something deep, and I just put it right on the table, and then I let them take it from there. And a lot of people just be like, oh, okay, that's interesting, and they'll move on and keep talking about something else. All right, fine, all right. And sometimes it takes, if you're going to see somebody a couple times, 3 times or whatever before, you kind of have to keep doing it before they finally open up a little bit. But sometimes I just open right up. Yeah, shadow work. I'm focusing on shadow work. I'm writing and talking about shadow work all the time. Whoa, shadow work? What's that? Well, this is where we work on all of our repressed lower nature and of all of our old childhood and intergenerational wounds. And we work on healing ourselves and making ourselves whole and growing internally, developmentally, becoming true psychospiritual adults. That's what we do. That's what shadow work is. Wow. Wow, okay, wow. And then sometimes it'll be like, well, and they'll, ask something else and it can go a little bit deeper, So sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's like, oh, scared them off, right? So anyway, that's how I do it. That's how I start conversations, and I don't play around, and because I don't want any other kind of relationship. Theo, what's going on, Theo? Oh, well, thank you, Theo. He says my message is needed, and I appreciate you too, brother. You're another alchemist on the path, another serious inner worker, badass on the path. Staying the course, developing, maturing, becoming a teacher in your own right. So yeah, man, hats off to you too, brother. So, okay, let me keep going here. Where are we in our time? We're at 9:15, so we got another 15 minutes or so. If anybody wants to say anything in there, time to do it is now. Yeah, shadow work isn't for the weak, but we always have a shadow. Yeah, so I can just go into this real quick. You've got the way I'm kind of, because like I said earlier, I don't know if you were on here earlier, but I was talking about these 2 papers that I'm writing. One is about the shadow through integral theory, the 4 quadrants, and the other one is about complexes. And so I'm really having to get clear, very, very clear. I'm trying to, every time I put something out, I'm always trying to clarify things more, challenge myself more, go into a deeper understanding of what this domain is. And so now I'm at the point of really clarifying how you've got kind of like 2 domains of shadow here, kind of a passive and an active domain. So you have the natural shadow. The shadow is a consequence of having an ego. We could call it a structural shadow. The ego is the conscious mind, and in order to have sane, moral, organized societies where we're not tearing each other apart, we have to basically repress our primal nature. We have to repress our natural selfishness, our natural, excessive sexuality, control freakism, control drives. We have to repress some grandiosity and narcissism. Well, at least we used to. Now it's like, now it's a virtue to be a narcissist, but traditionally you have to repress that. And you have to repress all the stuff that you got loaded in from your family of what you're not supposed to do, what you are supposed to do, what you're not supposed to do. So that's your structural shadow. That's your basic Jungian shadow, which is the equal opposite of the persona in Jungian psychology. So the persona or superego, how I'm supposed to be. These are the parameters of how I'm supposed to act, how I'm supposed to look, how I'm supposed to be a good person in society. And then everything that doesn't fit into that container, that gets repressed into the shadow. And then to find a way out, we project it into the world. We find those things about us that are in our own shadows, our own selfishness, our own narcissism, our own greediness, whatever it is. We find that, our own aggression, we find that in somebody else, and we go, you, Donald Trump, you, Barack Obama, you, this person, that person, whatever, and we find a target out there, and we project the shadow onto them. We project our shadow onto them, so now they can hold it for us. And then we can organize around it. We can get with other people, and we can go protest, or we can go do this, that, and the other. And we can displace the energy out into the world. And this is how we get all kinds of conflict, and we get all kinds of shadow displacement and all kinds of shady activity and all of this. We project and displace, and sometimes it just leaks out under the veil of cognitive dissonance. This is the basic structural Jungian shadow. And then you have the more active material that's dysregulated psychic energy from having wounded complexes, right? This is the shadow of dissociation and of trauma, right? This is what you're working with when you're doing IFS parts work, right? This is when you're working with Jungian complexes, right? So this is where parts of the psyche have been split, have been dissociated, and a complex is not working properly. A complex channels archetypal energy into the ego for proper behavior, but it gets skewed, it gets traumatized, it gets split up, and so then you have dysregulation in terms of your energy. And so it turns into neurotic behavior, it turns into compulsivity, it turns into addictions, it turns into grandiosity and inflation, it turns into triggerability and being very easily triggered by other people and situations. That's complex shadow. That's the shadow of dysregulation that comes from having traumatic circumstances in life or inheriting it from your parents. So one type of shadow is structural, and we all have that. We all have the structural shadow that comes as a consequence of just having a conscious ego. And then the other form is a trauma-based shadow. And that is the stuff that we can come to know the structural stuff and integrate a part of it. And we can get a lot healthier and a lot more balanced with that structural shadow. But with the complex shadow, the trauma-based type shadow, that we can very much do a lot with. And that isn't necessarily a part of the human, makeup. You don't have to be, you have difficulties in life, we all do, but you don't have to carry around all kinds of dysregulation from trauma. Everybody knows people who are really traumatized and people who are just not traumatized. Everybody has structural shadow, ego-based shadow, but not everybody has trauma-based shadow. So that's kind of how I would divide that up and talk about that. Oh, you just found me, and that you have lots to figure, but I'm stuck, and had me who I am as a child was silenced. Yes. Right, exactly. So you have shame, fear, grief, guilt around expressing yourself, around communication, and all of that. Yeah, of course I understand that. Yeah. So yeah, that's what you're going to be working with. And so, I would say go back to, if you just found me, go back and listen to the beginning of this show today, because we covered a lot of ground today. And then all these shows that I've done, I gotta push myself. Here's an example where Colin has to push himself to cut up these shows more often into pieces and feed them back into YouTube, so that you can get chunks of this material. I was on a roll for a while, but I've been slacking off, and so I've been telling myself I'm going to do that. No, because of, as they say, gifts. Okay. Well, you'd have to give me more detail on that, but it's all in the same category. It's all, repressed stuff. This is still the structural shadow, but this is the familial layer of it. The familial layer of shadow, where the family doesn't see the gifts. The family doesn't know how to mirror you in that area, and so I assume that's what you're talking about. But yeah, so you go back to the beginning of this. You can also, just for anybody that isn't familiar with my work, you can go to shadowtechalchemy.com, and you can get my last book. Just sign up for the mailing list. It's, I don't bug you on the mailing list, but you can download the last book for free. And there's a lot of shadow work practices in there, and there's a lot of explanation of the shadow and its relationship to evil. That's another kind of aspect of what I'm doing. But all connected, as I see here. Yeah, I'm having a hard time with the writing there, really getting a clear picture of what you're saying. But it's all in the same category. You're on your path. You're on your path. You're figuring it out. You're unwinding it, and you're staying on the path. And you're going to whatever sources you need to go to and figuring things out. And like I said earlier, let me just give you and some other people who might be listening some resources right now. Go to shadowtechalchemy.com, download the last book. You can get the other one too if you want to. Go to the articles section, and there is a reading list. The last post I just put up, I actually linked it in the description of this YouTube video, there's a reading list, and I've started a reading list. And so I basically copied it out of the back of my last book, Transforming Darkness. That's what I started with, and so that's there, and I'll keep adding to it, so you can keep checking back to that article. But that'll get you started with everything. Or if if you're already started, I'll give you some material there. And then you have my other broadcasts that I've been doing. This is like the 21st broadcast that I've done of these Solutio broadcasts. And it's not the most efficient way to get information, just sitting there listening to 2-hour broadcasts. But I would also refer you to the work of Robert Moore. And his lectures have been uploaded to YouTube now. There's so many of them on there, just so many. I kind of have his whole catalog, but they're now online. So yeah. So look at Robert Moore, read Robert Johnson's book, Owning Your Own Shadow. That's all in my reading list. So grab the reading list, grab my last book, hang out here at in this broadcast that happens every Tuesday, and and we'll go forward, and I'll do whatever I can for you, and the more accurate you can be with your language, then the better I can respond. So, where are we, folks? 8:26, 9:26. We are towards the end of our show here. Now, let me just go back to the... You're in the UK. Well, you speak English, so you should be able to communicate with me pretty easily then. So, I have, what else do I have here? I have some other stuff in here. I don't think I'm going to go into it today. Stuff I always talk about. Well, just slow it down and we'll get there. But yeah. So I stuff I always talk about. Life artistry. I brought up life artistry. We talked about life artistry earlier. We didn't talk about living on the edge of the matrix. This is the last thing I'm going to say before we move, before we tune out for today. Like I'm always saying about the new ethic and everything, what I'm trying to do here is not just give you guys personal examples and references and everything about doing personal shadow work or relational shadow work. That's kind of the main thing. But I'm also trying to help you see how this is all a lifestyle. This is what the whole 4 quadrants is about. I'm trying to help you see this is a very high integrity, shadow aware lifestyle. This is a way of being. This is basically a spiritual sect, is what you could see it as. And it's not my spiritual sect. All I'm doing is just continuing on with the tradition. Carl Jung is kind of the patron saint of this particular strain of things. And then I have my work that I did with Melissa Mari for 12 years, and that's kind of my kind of node of this. And I'm sharing with you how that this shadow aware alchemical way of life is complete. It's holistic. It's complete. It's done in the mind. It's done in relationships. It's done in how you interact with the world, in the culture that you're tuning into and the culture that you're giving back. It has to do with how you're treating your body, how you're working with your behavior. Like I was saying earlier about how I have to push myself to cut up videos and put them online. It's behavior. I got to work on that. It's our behavior, it's addictions, it's our actual eating and how we take care of our bodies and exercise and everything that goes into the body segment. And it's how we plug into society. It's the banks that we bank with. It's the corporations that we use or don't use. It's the companies that we work for or don't work for. It's the businesses that we get into, how we operate our businesses, how transparent we are. It's in every way analyzing our entire footprint. It's our environmental footprint. It's all of this to bring everything into cleanliness, everything into transparency, and everything into, we're basically doing a parasite cleanse on every aspect of life and being as mutualistic and non-parasitic as we possibly can in everything that we do in life, in every relationship, whether personal relationship or corporate or legal or government, however we interact with the world. It's clean and transparent and high integrity and shadow aware. And that's how we walk. That's our walk. And then we walk the walk, we talk the talk, and then we share it with other people. And we, quote unquote, be the change we want to see in the world. And like I was talking before about Eric Neumann's depth psychology and a new ethic, that's another one to our commenter there. My last video on this platform, on ShadowTech Alchemy YouTube page, is called Depth Psychology and a New Ethic. It's a paraphrased version of an important book, where a Jungian book that talks about our new ethic. It talks about the old ethic of shadow projection and then the new ethic of shadow awareness and shadow integration. It's from 1949. And so we're really rooting down into that. So now, with that said, last thing I'm going to go into here is I have living on the edge of the matrix. Because to be this kind of person, we basically have to live on the edge of the matrix. When the whole society is so unhealthy and so parasitic, and we just can't. We have to be very careful about how we plug into it. We can't just go to that college, get that degree, sign up for that career, work for that company, eat that food, watch that TV program. We can't do that anymore. That's not an option anymore. That's out, right? So we have to be very, very selective about how we participate in society. Very conscious and very selective. And so we're kind of on the edge of the matrix. We're kind of edge dwellers. And people, artists, musicians, artists, we're always like that. So I recognize that. That lifestyle, that's not. But lots of people who are really dedicated to their spirituality, and they're in different kinds of spirituality, Eastern, Western, whatever, Sufi, whatever they are, they're living like this. They're living very conscious, self-aware, spiritually connected lives. They're eating well, they're taking care of themselves, and in their practice, and they have their spiritual practice. So there's plenty of people that are doing this, but we're just doing it here through a 21st century Jungian framework that I think is very, very compatible with the Western mind, and very compatible with, well, it's not compatible with the way we've been, but it's very needed with where we're going, where we are right now, where we're going, because we're in a very shadowy place. So we need people to dedicate to this. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm just doing it myself, explaining to you what I'm doing, and encouraging you guys and helping you and giving you some feedback and giving you some guidance to the degree I can. And so you're not totally alone. And because now that I am where I am with the whole thing, like I said, I'm pretty solidified on this path now. So I can help orient you if you're feeling disoriented and you're on this path. Part of my job is to help orient you. So there we go. ShadowTechAlchemy.com, SolutioPodcast.com. Check out the movie about Melissa at melissamari.com. Check out Melissa's music at melissamarimusic.com. And you guys know there you go. That's all you need. And you can reach me at any time. And thank you all. Thank everybody for who has been in here in the comments tonight, that have left your lovely comments and asked questions or been very supportive. Thank you all very much. Appreciate you all. And I hope you all have a great week. And I will see you next Tuesday. Bye, everybody.